What if I told you that 97% of people who read about wealth will never actually achieve it, despite consuming countless books, videos, and motivational content? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Here's the brutal truth that no one wants to face. Most people who claim they want financial freedom are actually living in complete contradiction to their stated goals. They read success stories, they repeat positive affirmations, they attend seminars and buy courses, yet their bank accounts remain stubbornly unchanged. Their reality stays exactly the same, month after month, year after year. Has this ever happened to you? The reason isn't what you think. It's not because of the economy, it's not because of lack of opportunities, and it's certainly not because wealth is reserved for a chosen few. The real problem lies in something far more uncomfortable to acknowledge, something that requires looking in the mirror rather than pointing fingers at external circumstances. What you're about to discover might surprise you. But the greatest wealth teachers throughout history understood a fundamental principle that most people completely ignore. Emmet Fox, one of the most profound minds in the study of prosperity consciousness, identified this pattern decades ago. He observed that behind every great fortune, there was always one specific element that made success inevitable, and it had nothing to do with education, connections, or even starting capital. This element is so powerful that when properly activated, it transforms ordinary individuals into wealth magnets. It's the difference between those who dream about financial freedom and those who actually achieve it. Yet here's what's fascinating. This principle is simultaneously the simplest concept to understand and the most difficult for people to actually implement. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm sharing isn't just theory. It's a fundamental law that governs how wealth flows in this universe. When you truly grasp this concept, you'll understand why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others struggle, despite working twice as hard. The secret begins with understanding that wealth creation isn't primarily about external actions. It's about internal transformation. Most people approach financial success backwards. They wait for conditions to be perfect. They wait for someone to give them permission. They wait for the right moment to begin. But here's what Emmet Fox discovered through studying countless success stories. The universe doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who decide. And that decision isn't just an intellectual choice. It's a burning, consuming commitment that changes everything about how you think, how you feel, and how you show up in the world. This isn't about positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is about accessing a level of desire so intense that failure simply becomes impossible. What I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you think you know about creating wealth, and it starts with understanding why most people's approach to financial success is fundamentally flawed from the very beginning. The truth is, most people sabotage their own wealth creation journey before they even realize what's happening. They've been programmed to believe that success comes from doing more, trying harder, and constantly seeking the next breakthrough strategy. But this approach actually works against them in the most insidious way possible. If you're serious about mastering the mental game of wealth creation, hit that subscribe button and join this community of conscious wealth builders. This is where we dive deep into the principles that most people never learn, and I share new insights regularly that can accelerate your financial transformation. There's a hidden enemy operating in the shadows of every ambitious person's mind, and it's responsible for more financial failures than any external circumstance could ever be. This enemy doesn't announce itself with dramatic crashes or obvious setbacks. Instead, it whispers quietly, creating a constant sense of restlessness that keeps you perpetually searching for something better, something different, something that might finally be the answer you're looking for. This silent, Saboteur is dispersion, that nagging feeling that you could be doing something else, that there might be a faster path, a more exciting opportunity just around the corner. It's the reason why incredibly talented individuals jump from idea to idea, project to project, never staying with anything long enough to see real results materialize. Here's what's fascinating about human psychology. We've been conditioned to believe that keeping our options open is smart, that diversifying our efforts reduces risk. But when it comes to wealth creation, this scattered approach is actually the kiss of death. While you're busy exploring every possible avenue, someone else with half your talent but double your focus is building an empire in the time it takes you to research your next move. Emmet Fox understood something profound about the mechanics of success that most people never grasp. He recognized that mental clarity isn't just helpful for achieving wealth, it's the foundation upon which all sustainable prosperity is built. When your mind is clear, when your purpose is defined, when your energy is channeled in a single direction, you become an unstoppable force in the marketplace. Think about fire for a moment. A small, scattered flame barely warms your hands, but that same fire concentrated through a magnifying glass can burn through steel. Your desire for financial transformation works exactly the same way. A weak, divided desire produces weak, scattered results. But when you take that same desire and focus it with laser-like precision, it becomes powerful enough to reshape your entire reality. This is where most people make their critical mistake. They treat their financial goals like a hobby, something they'll work on when they have time, when they feel inspired, when conditions are perfect. They're not willing to obsess over their vision, to protect it from distractions, to defend it against the opinions and limitations of others. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're not willing to become obsessed with your success, someone else will become obsessed with theirs, and they'll claim the opportunities that could have been yours. The most successful people in history weren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They were the ones who understood that breakthrough results come from sustained, concentrated effort over time. They recognized that every moment spent questioning their path, every hour wasted exploring alternatives, every day lost to indecision was a gift handed directly to their competition. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation, because there's something even more powerful at work here. When you truly commit to a single vision, when you organize your mental energy around one clear objective, something almost magical begins to happen. Your mind starts operating on a completely different frequency. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly become obvious. Resources you never knew existed start flowing in your direction. This isn't positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is about understanding how the universe actually responds to focused intention. When your commitment becomes unshakable, when your vision becomes non-negotiable, you enter what Emmet Fox called the realm of inevitable success. Write in the comments, "My focus is my power," if this resonates with what you've experienced in your own journey toward financial transformation. What separates those who achieve inevitable success from those who remain stuck in cycles of frustration goes far deeper than most people realize. There's an invisible programming operating behind the scenes in the minds of truly wealthy individuals, and it's completely different from what popular culture would have you believe. Most people think millionaires are just lucky, or that they possess some special talent, or that they were born into the right circumstances. But when you study the actual psychology of wealth creators, you discover something far more fascinating and far more accessible. The real difference lies in how they've trained their minds to process reality itself. Here's where it gets interesting. True millionaires don't operate on the same mental frequency as everyone else. While most people need to see evidence before they believe something is possible, wealthy individuals have mastered the art of believing first, and then allowing that belief to create the evidence. This isn't about blind optimism or wishful thinking. This is about understanding that faith, when properly applied, becomes a strategic tool for reshaping your circumstances. Think about this for a moment. Every breakthrough in human history, every innovation, every empire that was ever built, started with someone who believed in something that didn't yet exist in their reality. They saw possibilities where others saw problems. They felt certainty where others felt doubt. This wasn't because they were delusional or unrealistic. It was because they understood that belief is actually a form of mental programming that directs your subconscious mind towards specific outcomes. The wealthy have learned to use faith as a chemical element that transforms their thinking patterns. When fear appears, instead of allowing it to paralyze them or send them into reactive mode, their programmed response activates automatically. They don't fight the fear or pretend it doesn't exist. Instead, they've trained their minds to immediately redirect that energy toward their vision, using the intensity of the emotion as fuel for forward movement. But here's where most people get stuck, and it's probably the most important revelation you'll hear today. Even if you intellectually understand these concepts, even if you practice positive affirmations every morning, even if you visualize your goals and set intentions, your results will remain blocked if your automatic thought patterns are still operating from scarcity. Programming. This is the hidden truth behind why so many people struggle despite doing all the right things. They're trying to build wealth consciousness on top of poverty programming, and it simply doesn't work that way. Your subconscious mind is like a computer operating system, and if the base code is infected with doubt, complaint, and comparison, no amount of surface-level positive thinking will override those deep-seated patterns. Wealthy individuals understand that true transformation requires active deprogramming. They don't just add new positive thoughts to their mental diet. They systematically identify and eliminate the negative thought loops that have been running automatically in the background of their minds. Day after day, thought after thought, they catch themselves in moments of scarcity thinking and consciously redirect their mental energy toward abundance patterns. This process isn't glamorous, and it's certainly not easy. It requires constant vigilance and honest self-examination. It means paying attention to the conversations you have with yourself when no one else is listening. It means noticing the subtle ways you sabotage your own progress through seemingly innocent thoughts of limitation and doubt. If this conversation resonated with you, if you felt that shift in your thinking, give this video a like. It tells me that this message reached the right people at the right time, and it helps me continue creating content that serves your transformation. The journey of reprogramming your subconscious mind is like renovating a house while you're still living in it. You have to be patient with the process while maintaining absolute commitment to the transformation. Some days, you'll catch every negative thought before it takes root. Other days, you'll realize you've been running old patterns for hours without even noticing. But here's what makes this entire process worthwhile. When you begin to successfully reprogram your mental operating system, when you start catching and redirecting those automatic scarcity thoughts, something profound begins to shift in your external reality. Opportunities start appearing that weren't visible before. Your decision-making becomes sharper and more strategic. Your confidence grows not from external validation, but from internal alignment. The most successful people in the world have learned to become the guardians of their own mental environment. They understand that every thought they think is either moving them toward their vision or away from it. There's no neutral ground in the realm of consciousness. Write in the comments, "I guard my thoughts," if you're ready to take responsibility for the programming that's currently running your financial destiny. This brings us to one of the most powerful revelations about wealth creation that most people completely overlook. There's an invisible realm where all financial transformation actually begins, and it's operating right under your nose every single day. Yet the majority of people are completely unconscious of how they're using this incredible creative force. Every single thing that exists in your physical reality right now, from the device you're watching this on to the chair you're sitting in, from the most advanced technology to the simplest everyday objects, all of it began as nothing more than a thought in someone's mind. This isn't philosophical speculation. It's the fundamental law of creation that governs everything in our universe. Your financial situation is no exception to this rule. The money in your bank account, the opportunities that come your way, the relationships that support your growth, the obstacles that seem to block your path, all of it originated in the invisible field of consciousness before it manifested in your physical experience. This means that your current financial reality is simply a reflection of what's been happening in your mental environment. Here's where this gets really fascinating. Your subconscious mind, which controls over 90% of your daily behavior and decision-making, doesn't have the ability to distinguish between something you vividly imagine and something you actually experience. This is why trauma can be so persistent, why phobias can develop from imagined scenarios, and why professional athletes spend so much time visualizing their performance before competitions. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. If your subconscious can't tell the difference between imagined and real experiences, then you have the power to literally program your future by controlling what you consistently visualize and feel in your mind. When you repeatedly imagine yourself living in abundance, when you feel the emotions of financial freedom, when you see yourself making the decisions that wealthy people make, your subconscious begins to accept this as your actual reality. This is where most people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. Instead of using their imagination as a blueprint for the life they want to create, they use it as a recycling center for their fears and limitations. They wake up each morning already worried about bills they haven't received yet. They go to sleep visualizing worst-case scenarios that may never happen. They spend their mental energy rehearsing conversations where they have to explain why they can't afford something. Your imagination isn't just daydreaming or wishful thinking. It's actually the architectural blueprint for your future reality. Every thought you think with emotional intensity, every scenario you repeatedly visualize, every feeling you consistently generate is sending instructions to your subconscious mind about what kind of life to create for you. The challenge is that most people have never been taught to use their imagination strategically. They've been conditioned to see it as escapism or fantasy, something separate from practical reality. But the wealthy understand that imagination is the most practical tool they possess. It's how they design their future before they build it. It's how they solve problems before they encounter them. It's how they prepare their minds for success before opportunities even appear. Your mind operates like a powerful magnet, constantly attracting experiences that match your dominant mental and emotional patterns. If you're consistently worried about money, your mind will magnetize situations that give you more reasons to worry about money. If you're constantly comparing yourself to others and feeling inadequate, you'll attract experiences that reinforce those feelings of inadequacy. But when you learn to consciously direct your imagination toward the outcomes you actually want, when you train yourself to feel abundant before abundance appears, when you consistently visualize yourself succeeding, your mind begins to magnetize the people, opportunities, and resources that align with those visions. The universe doesn't respond to what you say you want. It doesn't even respond to what you consciously think you deserve. It responds to the dominant signal you're broadcasting through your consistent thoughts and emotions. This signal is operating 24 hours a day, whether you're aware of it or not, constantly communicating your expectations to the field of infinite possibilities. Now, understanding this principle is just the beginning, because there's something even more profound happening when you begin to master your imagination. Something that explains why certain people seem to effortlessly attract wealth while others struggle despite working incredibly hard. Write in the comments, "I design my reality," if you're starting to see how your imagination has been shaping your financial experience all along. What I'm about to share with you might be the most uncomfortable truth you'll hear today, but it's also potentially the most liberating. There's a silent assassin operating in the minds of most people who dream of financial freedom, and it's responsible for more destroyed opportunities than any external obstacle could ever be. This assassin doesn't announce itself with dramatic failures or obvious setbacks. Instead, it operates in the shadows, quietly poisoning every possibility before it has a chance to fully develop. It shows up in those moments when you know exactly what you need to do, but instead of moving forward, you hesitate, you overthink, you seek more information, you consult others, you wait for the perfect moment, the right conditions, the ideal circumstances. This silent destroyer is indecision, and it's literally training your mind for mediocrity every single day. Here's what most people don't understand. When you fail to make a decision, you've actually made the most expensive decision possible. You've decided to let circumstances choose your path instead of consciously creating your destiny. Emmet Fox observed something fascinating about successful individuals versus those who remain stuck in cycles of frustration. The wealthy make decisions quickly and change their minds slowly, while struggling people do exactly the opposite. They agonize over every choice, seeking endless validation and perfect information, but then abandon their commitments at the first sign of difficulty or doubt. This pattern reveals something profound about the psychology of success. Decision-making isn't really about having access to better information or superior intelligence. It's about character. It's about your willingness to take responsibility for your choices and their consequences. It's about understanding that perfect information doesn't exist, perfect timing never arrives, and perfect conditions are a myth designed to keep you paralyzed. Every moment you spend in indecision is a moment you're unconsciously training your brain to avoid responsibility, to seek external validation, and to prioritize comfort over growth. Your neural pathways are literally being rewired to default toward hesitation instead of action. This is why some people seem naturally decisive, while others chronically struggle with even simple choices. The most successful people in the world understand something that escapes the majority. Opportunities have expiration dates. They don't wait patiently while you gather more data, seek additional opinions, or wait for your fears to subside. They move toward those who are ready to act, those who understand that imperfect action beats perfect inaction every single time. But here's where this gets really interesting from a wealth creation perspective. The universe seems to operate on a principle of rewarding decisiveness itself, independent of whether every decision turns out perfectly. When you develop the muscle of quick decision-making, when you become someone who can evaluate options rapidly and commit to a course of action, you begin attracting opportunities that require exactly that kind of confident leadership. Think about the most successful business leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors you know of. They're not necessarily smarter than everyone else, and they certainly don't have access to some secret information that's unavailable to others. What they possess is the rare ability to make important decisions with incomplete information and then marshal all their resources toward making those decisions work. This decision-making ability becomes a magnet for wealth because it demonstrates to others that you're someone who can be trusted with important responsibilities, someone who can move projects forward instead of getting stuck in analysis paralysis, someone who creates momentum instead of waiting for it to appear magically. The brutal truth is that while you're sitting on the sidelines, gathering more information and seeking more certainty, other people with half your knowledge but twice your decisiveness are claiming the opportunities that could have been yours. They're building the businesses you thought about starting. They're making the investments you researched but never acted on. They're creating the lives you've been planning to create someday. Every time you choose indecision, you're essentially choosing to remain a spectator in your own life instead of becoming the director of your destiny. You're training your subconscious mind to believe that you're not capable of handling important choices, that you need external permission to move forward, that your judgment can't be trusted. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep receiving content that goes beyond surface-level financial advice. I'm constantly uncovering the psychological and spiritual principles that separate those who achieve lasting wealth from those who remain stuck, and I don't want you to miss any of these revelations. But the moment you begin to shift this pattern, the moment you start making decisions with confidence and speed, something remarkable begins to happen. Your brain starts rewiring itself for leadership instead of followership, for action instead of hesitation, for creating instead of consuming. Now, there's something even more powerful that happens when you combine decisive action with the mental programming techniques we've been discussing. Something that explains why certain decisions seem to unlock an entirely new level of opportunity and abundance. Write in the comments, "I decide with confidence," if you're ready to break free from the paralysis of overthinking and step into the power of conscious choice-making. When you begin to understand the true psychology of wealth creation, you discover something that might completely shift your perspective on what drives extraordinary financial success. There's an emotional component to building wealth that goes far deeper than most people realize, and it's often completely misunderstood by those who remain stuck in financial mediocrity. Here's what's fascinating about studying the backgrounds of truly wealthy individuals. Behind every major fortune, there's always an emotional story that's far more intense than what appears on the surface. It's not just about having good ideas or being in the right place at the right time. It's about possessing a level of emotional intensity that makes failure literally unacceptable. The emotion that most powerfully drives wealth creation isn't what you might expect. It's not optimism or excitement or even ambition in the traditional sense. It's something much more primal, much more consuming. It's what Emmet Fox identified as burning desire, not the lukewarm kind of wanting that most people experience, but the type of desire that keeps you awake at night, that makes you uncomfortable with your current situation, that forces you to take action even when you're terrified of the consequences. This isn't the polite, socially acceptable kind of motivation that gets discussed in mainstream success literature. This is raw, visceral, almost obsessive energy that transforms ordinary individuals into unstoppable forces of creation. When this type of desire takes hold of someone, they don't just want financial freedom, they need it with every fiber of their being. But here's where the story gets really interesting, and it's something that might surprise you about the emotional origins of great wealth. Many of the most successful people didn't start their journey motivated by positive emotions at all. They weren't inspired by visions of abundance or dreams of luxury. Instead, they were driven by something much more uncomfortable, but ultimately more powerful. They were absolutely fed up with their circumstances. Think about this for a moment. Some of the greatest fortunes in history were built by people who reached a breaking point with scarcity, with humiliation, with having other people make decisions about their lives. They got tired of being overlooked, undervalued, dismissed. They became exhausted with making excuses, accepting limitations, and living below their potential. That exhaustion, that righteous anger at their situation, became the emotional fuel that powered their transformation. This reveals something profound about human psychology that most people never tap into. When you're truly fed up with your current reality, when you reach that point where continuing to live the same way becomes more painful than the uncertainty of change, you access a level of energy and determination that simply isn't available to those who are merely hoping for something better. There's a crucial difference between wanting to escape discomfort and being driven to create something extraordinary. Most people operate from the first motivation. They want enough money to feel safe, to avoid financial stress, to have a comfortable retirement. But the truly wealthy operate from the second motivation. They're driven to build something significant, to prove something to themselves and the world, to transform not just their bank accounts, but their entire identity. This emotional intensity creates what psychologists call an altered state of consciousness, where normal limitations seem to dissolve. When someone is operating from this level of burning desire, they don't see obstacles the same way other people do. They don't get discouraged by temporary setbacks. They don't need external motivation to keep going because the fire inside them is self-sustaining. The transformation that occurs when pain becomes purpose is one of the most powerful psychological shifts a human being can experience. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become an architect of solutions. Instead of complaining about what's wrong with the world, you become obsessed with creating something better. Instead of waiting for someone else to change your situation, you develop an unshakable conviction that you are the change your life has been waiting for. This emotional alchemy, this ability to transform frustration into fuel, disappointment into determination, and pain into power, is what separates those who dream about wealth from those who actually create it. It's not enough to want financial freedom intellectually. You have to want it with such intensity that not achieving it becomes literally impossible to accept. The most successful people understand that emotional intensity is the bridge between knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently over time. Knowledge without emotional commitment remains theoretical, but when you combine clear strategy with burning desire, when you fuel your actions with transformed pain, you become an unstoppable force in the marketplace. Now, there's something even more remarkable that happens when you learn to harness this emotional energy and channel it through the right mental techniques. Something that explains why some people can maintain this intensity for years, while others burn out after a few weeks. Write in the comments, "I transform pain into power," if you recognize this emotional pattern in your own journey toward financial transformation. This emotional intensity we've been discussing becomes truly transformative when you learn to channel it through a specific mental technique that most people have heard about, but very few actually understand how to use effectively. What I'm about to share with you is probably the most practical and immediately applicable strategy for reprogramming your financial destiny. Yet it's so simple that most people dismiss it as too basic to be powerful. Emmet Fox identified this technique as auto-suggestion, which is essentially the process of systematically influencing your subconscious mind through carefully crafted statements that you repeat with emotional intensity, genuine faith, and clear purpose. But here's where most people go completely wrong with this approach. They treat it like a mechanical exercise, repeating phrases like robots without any real emotional connection to what they're saying. You've probably seen people standing in front of mirrors saying things like, "I am wealthy," or "money flows to me easily," while their voice sounds flat, their body language screams doubt, and their eyes reflect nothing but hope mixed with desperation. This approach not only fails to create transformation, it actually reinforces the gap between where you are and where you want to be, because your subconscious mind can sense the incongruence between your words and your authentic emotional state. The key insight that changes everything is understanding that your subconscious mind doesn't operate on logic or verbal information alone. It responds to the emotional energy behind your thoughts and the consistency of the signals you send it. When you repeat affirmations without genuine feeling, without connecting to the vision of who you're becoming, you're essentially wasting your time and potentially even strengthening the very patterns you're trying to change. Here's what makes this technique incredibly powerful. When used correctly, your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between something you experience in physical reality and something you imagine with sufficient emotional intensity and sensory detail. This isn't motivational theory. This is how your nervous system actually functions. The same neural pathways that fire when you physically experience success also activate when you vividly imagine yourself succeeding while feeling the emotions of that success. The wealthy understand this principle at a deep level, and they use it strategically every single day. They don't just think about abundance. They feel abundant before abundance appears in their external circumstances. They don't just visualize success, they embody the emotional state of success until their entire energy signature changes to match their vision. In the quiet moments when no one else is watching, when there's no audience to impress, and no external validation to seek, they engage in this practice with religious-like consistency. They repeat carefully chosen phrases like, "I am destined for abundance," or "Wealth flows to me through multiple streams," or "I am a magnet for profitable opportunities." But they don't just say the words, they feel them, breathe them, and allow them to reshape their internal reality. This practice requires a level of commitment and consistency that most people simply aren't willing to maintain. It means engaging with your vision every single day, regardless of what your current circumstances look like. It means training yourself to feel wealthy when your bank account might suggest otherwise. It means maintaining faith in your transformation, even when external evidence hasn't caught up yet. A like on this video means more than you might think. It shows me that these deeper insights about wealth creation are making a real impact. And it encourages me to keep sharing the principles that can genuinely change your financial destiny. But when you commit to this process with genuine dedication, something remarkable begins to happen. Your nervous system starts adapting to this new identity you're consistently rehearsing. Your decision-making patterns begin to align with the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been. Your confidence grows not from external achievements, but from internal consistency. The transformation occurs gradually at first, then suddenly. Your subconscious mind begins to accept this new programming as your actual reality. And once that shift happens, your behaviors, choices, and responses to opportunities start changing automatically. You don't have to force yourself to think like a wealthy person. You start naturally thinking like a wealthy person because that's who you've trained yourself to be at a subconscious level. Most people give up on this practice because they expect immediate external results. But the real magic happens in the invisible realm first. Your energy changes before your circumstances change. Your mindset shifts before your bank account shifts. Your identity transforms before your lifestyle transforms. The key is understanding that this isn't about positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is about systematically rewiring your subconscious programming through repetition, emotion, and unwavering consistency. It's about becoming so clear about who you're becoming that your current reality has no choice but to eventually match your internal conviction. Now, there's another dimension to this transformation that most people never discover, something that determines whether this mental reprogramming actually translates into tangible results in the real world. Write in the comments, "I program my success," if you're ready to commit to this daily practice of conscious self-transformation. The mental reprogramming techniques we've been discussing can be incredibly powerful, but there's a hidden factor that can completely sabotage all your efforts if you're not aware of it. This factor operates so subtly that most people never recognize how it's undermining their progress, yet it's responsible for keeping more talented individuals stuck in financial mediocrity than any other single obstacle. What I'm talking about is the invisible contamination that occurs when you're consistently exposed to the wrong mental environment. You can practice autosuggestion perfectly, you can visualize with complete emotional intensity, you can have absolute clarity about your financial goals. But if you're surrounded by people whose minds are programmed for scarcity, their influence will slowly but surely erode your mental conditioning. Here's what's fascinating about human psychology. We're unconsciously designed to mirror the energy and thought patterns of the people we spend the most time around. This isn't a conscious choice. It's a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors fit into tribes and communities. But in today's world, this same mechanism can become a trap that keeps you operating at the level of your environment rather than rising to the level of your potential. Think about the conversations you have on a regular basis. When you mention your dreams of financial freedom, how do people respond? When you talk about starting a business or making a significant investment, what kind of energy comes back to you? If you're like most people, you've probably noticed that discussing your bigger ambitions often triggers skepticism, warnings about being too ambitious, or subtle suggestions that you should be more realistic about your expectations. This isn't necessarily coming from a place of malice. Often, the people closest to you genuinely believe they're protecting you from disappointment or failure. But what they're actually doing is programming your subconscious mind with their own limitations, their own fears, and their own conditioning around what's possible for someone like you. Your mind functions like a garden, and just like any garden, it will grow whatever seeds are planted in it most consistently. If you're constantly exposed to conversations about how difficult life is, how unfair the system is, how impossible it is to get ahead, how people with money are somehow morally compromised, then those seeds of limitation will take root in your subconscious and begin to influence your behavior, your decisions, and your results. The challenge is that this contamination happens gradually and often through people you care about. It's not like someone directly tells you that you can't succeed. Instead, it's the accumulation of subtle comments, worried expressions, skeptical questions, and energy that communicates doubt about your capabilities and your dreams. What makes this particularly insidious is that your subconscious mind doesn't just absorb information, it imitates the dominant emotional and mental patterns it's exposed to. If you're surrounded by people who operate from fear, who make decisions based on scarcity, who complain about their circumstances rather than taking responsibility for changing them, your own thought patterns will unconsciously begin to mirror those same frequencies. This is why Emmet Fox emphasized that successful people must become extremely selective about their mental diet. Just as you wouldn't knowingly consume poison with your food, you can't afford to consistently consume mental poison through toxic conversations, negative media, or relationships that drain your energy and diminish your vision. The most successful people understand that protecting their mental environment isn't selfish. It's essential. They recognize that their thoughts and emotions are their most valuable assets, and they guard them with the same intensity that they would guard their physical health or their financial investments. This doesn't mean you have to become arrogant or dismissive of others. It means you become conscious about what voices you allow to influence your internal state. It means you start paying attention to how you feel after spending time with different people. It means you become intentional about surrounding yourself with individuals who believe in possibilities rather than limitations, who celebrate success rather than resenting it, who inspire you to expand rather than encouraging you to settle. The transformation that occurs when you begin to curate your mental environment is remarkable. Suddenly, ideas that seemed impossible start feeling achievable. Opportunities that were invisible before begin to appear. Your confidence grows not because you're receiving external validation, but because you're no longer being constantly exposed to energy that undermines your self-belief. Now, there's a specific strategy for not just protecting yourself from negative environmental influences, but actually creating an environment that amplifies your wealth, consciousness, and accelerates your results. Write in the comments, "I choose my environment," if you're ready to take control of what influences are shaping your financial destiny. Creating the right mental environment is crucial, but there's another dimension to wealth creation that reveals why some people see extraordinary results, while others, despite having all the right conditions and knowledge, seem to hit invisible walls that keep them stuck in cycles of almost, but not quite success. What I'm about to share with you might be the most important insight in this entire conversation, because it explains the difference between those who achieve breakthrough results and those who remain perpetually frustrated despite doing many things right. This principle operates completely behind the scenes, in a realm that most people never understand or even recognize exists. Here's the hidden truth. The universe operates on a completely different timeline than your conscious mind expects. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You understand that there's an invisible process happening beneath the surface, that growth is occurring even when you can't see evidence of it, and that your job is to maintain faith in the process until the results become visible. Wealth creation works exactly the same way, but most people have never learned to think about their financial transformation with this level of patience and persistence. They engage in the right activities for a few weeks or months, but when they don't see immediate external changes, they conclude that their approach isn't working, and they abandon their efforts just when momentum was beginning to build. This is one of the most tragic patterns in human behavior, because the majority of people give up literally days, weeks, or months before their breakthrough would have occurred. They confuse the natural slowness of meaningful change with failure. They interpret the absence of immediate results as evidence that their strategy is flawed, when in reality, they're simply experiencing the normal gestation period that all significant transformations require. What you're doing today, in terms of mental conditioning, decision-making, and consistent action, might be building changes that you won't see for 6 months, a year, or even longer. But when those changes do appear, they often seem to happen suddenly, almost overnight, even though they were actually the result of accumulated efforts that finally reached a tipping point. The wealthy understand this principle instinctively. They don't expect their investments to pay off immediately. They don't abandon their strategies because they don't see instant gratification. They operate with a long-term perspective that allows them to persist through periods when external results don't match their internal commitment. But there's something even more powerful at work here. When you make the internal decision to persist regardless of what happens, when you commit to your vision so completely that turning back isn't even an option you consider, you actually become a different kind of force in the universe. You stop being someone who's trying to succeed and become someone who's determined to succeed. This shift in identity creates what can only be described as an unstoppable momentum. The universe seems to respond differently to people who have crossed this threshold of commitment. Opportunities begin appearing that weren't visible before. Resources start flowing that seemed scarce previously. People enter your life who can help you in ways you never anticipated. This isn't mystical thinking, it's observable pattern recognition. When you study the backgrounds of truly successful individuals, you'll notice that many of them reached a point where they literally burned their bridges, where they committed so completely to their vision that failure became impossible because they had eliminated all other options. The challenge for most people is that they want to keep one foot in their old reality while trying to step into a new one. They want to transform their financial situation, but they also want the security of knowing they can go back to their previous way of thinking and living if things don't work out. This divided commitment creates divided results. Persistence isn't just about continuing to take action when things get difficult. It's about maintaining your vision, your emotional state, and your identity as someone who's destined for wealth, even when external circumstances seem to contradict that vision. It's about understanding that your breakthrough might be disguised as your biggest setback. that your opportunity might arrive in the form of your greatest challenge. The universe rewards those who insist, not those who simply try. There's a fundamental difference between someone who's hoping for success and someone who has decided that success is inevitable. That decision, that unwavering commitment, that refusal to consider any outcome other than achieving your vision, creates a kind of magnetic force that begins to reorganize your entire reality around your highest intentions. Now, there's a specific way that this persistence must be channeled if it's going to translate into actual wealth, rather than just stubborn determination that leads nowhere. The secret lies in understanding how to persist intelligently while remaining flexible enough to adapt your methods without compromising your ultimate destination. Write in the comments, "I persist until breakthrough," if you're ready to make that level of commitment to your financial transformation. This intelligent persistence we've been discussing becomes even more crucial when you understand the psychological forces that are constantly working to pull you back toward mediocrity. There's one particular fear that destroys more dreams than financial limitations, lack of knowledge, or even external obstacles combined. It operates so quietly that most people never recognize it as the primary force keeping them trapped in lives that feel smaller than their potential. This invisible assassin is the fear of what others will think about your ambitions, your vision, and your determination to create something extraordinary. It's the voice in your head that whispers warnings about appearing too confident, too ambitious, or too different from everyone around you. It convinces you to stay small, to keep your dreams private, to avoid taking bold action that might attract attention or criticism. Most people have learned to censor their own greatness before anyone else even has the opportunity to judge it. They won't talk about their business ideas because someone might think they're unrealistic. They won't pursue their vision with full intensity because others might see them as obsessive or arrogant. They won't bet on themselves completely because failure would be visible and success might make others uncomfortable. Hit subscribe because what we explore here isn't available anywhere else. These are the hidden principles of wealth consciousness that took me years to discover and understand. I'm sharing them regularly with people who are ready to think differently about money and success. But here's what's absolutely fascinating about this fear. The very people whose opinions you're worried about are usually so consumed with their own survival, their own insecurities, and their own daily challenges that they're barely paying attention to your journey. The brutal truth is that most people are too busy managing their own lives to spend significant mental energy judging yours. And even when people do notice your ambitions and offer their opinions, those opinions are almost always projections of their own limitations rather than accurate assessments of your capabilities. When someone tells you to be more realistic, they're usually telling you to conform to their level of reality. When they warn you about the risks of thinking big, they're often revealing their own fear of thinking big. The transformation that occurs when you stop living for other people's approval is nothing short of revolutionary. Suddenly, you're free to pursue opportunities that excite you rather than ones that seem safe and acceptable. You can speak about your vision with passion instead of apologizing for your ambition. You can take calculated risks instead of playing it safe to avoid criticism. This freedom to be authentic about your goals and determined about your path creates a completely different relationship with time itself. And this brings us to perhaps the most practical aspect of wealth creation that separates those who succeed from those who remain stuck, despite having good intentions and solid strategies. Every minute of your life is essentially a coin that once spent can never be recovered or reinvested. Yet most people treat their time as if it were an unlimited resource, spending hours on activities that don't move them closer to their goals, engaging in conversations that drain their energy rather than elevate their thinking, and allowing their days to be shaped by reaction and survival rather than intention and design. The wealthy operate with a completely different understanding of time. They don't see their days as something that happens to them. They see each day as raw material that can be consciously crafted into stepping stones toward their vision. They approach their schedule with the same strategic thinking that an investor brings to building a portfolio, asking themselves what return they're getting on each hour they invest. This doesn't mean they become obsessive workaholics who never rest or enjoy life. It means they become intentional about how they use their most precious resource. They understand that time invested in learning compounds over years. Time invested in building relationships creates opportunities that money can't buy. Time invested in developing their mindset and expanding their vision generates ideas and insights that can transform their entire trajectory. While most people are reacting to whatever demands are placed on them, scrolling through social media without conscious purpose, or engaging in activities that feel productive but don't actually move them forward. The wealthy are designing their days like architects design buildings, with clear intention, strategic thinking, and long-term vision. The compound effect of this different relationship with time is staggering. Over months and years, the person who consciously invests their time in wealth-building activities creates an entirely different life than the person who simply allows their time to be consumed by whatever seems urgent or entertaining in the moment. Now, there's a specific way that successful people structure their time that goes beyond just being more productive. It's about understanding how to create what I call wealth-generating time blocks that compound your results exponentially. Write in the comments, "I invest my time strategically," if you're ready to start treating your time as the precious, finite resource that it actually is. This strategic approach to time management becomes truly powerful when you understand that wealth isn't built through occasional bursts of inspired action or sporadic efforts when motivation strikes. The real secret lies in something far less glamorous, but infinitely more effective: the compound power of seemingly small daily habits that most people dismiss as insignificant. Here's what's absolutely fascinating about studying wealthy individuals. Their success isn't the result of extraordinary moments or dramatic breakthroughs, although those certainly occur. Instead, it's the inevitable outcome of ordinary discipline applied with extraordinary consistency over extended periods of time. They understand that wealth is directly proportional to the quality of your daily habits, not to your intelligence, your connections, or even your starting capital. Most people are looking for the magic bullet, the secret strategy, the breakthrough moment that will instantly transform their financial situation. But the wealthy know that real transformation happens through what I call invisible discipline, the small daily actions that compound over time to create massive results. This discipline is invisible because it happens behind closed doors, away from social media, without fanfare or recognition. Every single day, without exception, they dedicate specific time blocks exclusively to activities that generate long-term wealth. This might mean spending an hour developing new skills that increase their market value, researching investment opportunities, building strategic relationships, creating systems that generate passive income, or simply thinking deeply about how to solve problems that the market will pay them to solve. The key insight here is that these activities often don't produce immediate, visible results. You can spend a year building knowledge, networks, and systems before you see any significant external changes in your financial situation. But when the results do begin to manifest, they often seem to appear suddenly and dramatically, even though they were actually the inevitable consequence of consistent daily action over time. This reveals something profound about the nature of wealth creation that most people never understand. It's not the money itself that creates lasting financial success. It's the internal structure that sustains that money. You can give someone $1 million, but if they don't have the character, the habits, the mindset, and the emotional capacity to sustain wealth, they'll find a way to lose it faster than you might think possible. What you see in someone's bank account is merely the external reflection of their internal mental, emotional, and spiritual structure. If that internal structure is built on solid foundations of discipline, clear thinking, delayed gratification, and strategic planning, then wealth becomes a natural and sustainable outcome. But if the internal structure is chaotic, impulsive, fear-based, or lacking in genuine self-worth, then any external wealth that appears will eventually disappear. This is why so many people struggle with what psychologists call upper limit problems. They reach a certain level of financial success, but then unconsciously sabotage themselves because their internal structure hasn't evolved to match their external achievements. They might start making poor investment decisions, engage in self-destructive behaviors, or simply lose focus and motivation because they haven't done the deep work of building the character that can sustain long-term prosperity. The transformation process that leads to lasting wealth isn't just about learning new strategies or developing new skills, although those elements are certainly important. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts and sustains financial abundance. It's about developing the internal qualities of patience, discipline, strategic thinking, and unshakable self-worth that make wealth not just possible, but inevitable. This internal development happens through the daily habits we've been discussing, but it goes deeper than just time management or productivity techniques. It requires honest self-examination about your relationship with money, your beliefs about what you deserve, your capacity to handle increasing levels of responsibility and opportunity, and your willingness to continue growing even when growth feels uncomfortable. The most successful people understand that they must constantly evolve their internal structure to match their expanding external goals. They invest as much time and energy in developing their character as they do in developing their businesses. They recognize that every level of wealth requires a corresponding level of personal development, and they approach this development with the same discipline and consistency that they bring to their financial strategies. Now, there's a specific way to accelerate this internal development that most people never discover, something that explains why some individuals can transform their entire financial reality in a matter of months, while others struggle for years to see meaningful change. Write in the comments, "I build from within." If you understand that true wealth starts with the person you become, not just the actions you take, this internal development that creates sustainable wealth rests on three fundamental pillars that most people either ignore completely or only partially implement, which explains why their results remain inconsistent and their progress feels frustratingly slow. These aren't optional elements that you can pick and choose from. They're non-negotiable foundations that must all be present for true wealth consciousness to emerge. The first pillar is discipline that becomes so deeply ingrained it operates automatically without requiring willpower or motivation. This isn't the kind of discipline that feels like forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. It's the natural result of becoming someone who simply doesn't negotiate with their own commitments. When you reach this level, doing what you said you would do becomes as automatic as breathing. The second pillar is internal order, which means organizing your mental and emotional landscape so that clarity can emerge naturally. Your mind cannot attract abundance if it's constantly full of chaos, conflicting desires, unresolved emotional patterns, and scattered thoughts. Most people are trying to build wealth on top of internal disorder, which is like trying to construct a skyscraper on quicksand. The foundation simply cannot support the structure they're attempting to create. The third pillar, and perhaps the most challenging for people to fully embrace, is taking total responsibility for everything that occurs in your life. This means eliminating all traces of blame, excuses, and victimhood from your mental operating system. It means understanding that everything that happens to you is information that reveals what you need to adjust within yourself. This level of responsibility is incredibly empowering because it puts you in complete control of your destiny, but it's also uncomfortable because it removes the option of making your circumstances someone else's fault. When these three pillars are solidly in place, something remarkable begins to happen that transcends normal cause and effect thinking. You enter what can only be described as a different operating system for creating results. Instead of the slow, linear progress that most people experience, you begin to make what Emmet Fox called quantum leaps in consciousness that translate directly into quantum leaps in your external circumstances. This isn't mystical thinking, it's observable pattern recognition. When you study individuals who seem to accelerate their results dramatically in short periods of time, you'll notice they're not necessarily working more hours or even working harder than others. Instead, they've learned to access a state of focused consciousness that literally changes how the universe responds to their efforts. The key insight here is that wealth isn't reached through gradual walking toward your goals. It's reached through sudden consciousness jumps that collapse time and create breakthrough results that seem impossible from a linear perspective. These leaps happen when you combine intense focus with genuine excitement about your vision and unwavering decision about your destination. When you're operating from this state, completely focused, emotionally elevated, and absolutely decided, your energy signature changes in ways that other people can feel even when they can't articulate. What's different about you? Opportunities begin appearing that weren't visible before. People start responding to you differently. Resources that seemed scarce suddenly become available. Ideas that solve multiple problems simultaneously begin flowing through your consciousness. This phenomenon occurs because the universe operates on energetic frequencies, and when you shift your internal frequency through this combination of focus, excitement, and decision, you literally tune into a different channel of possibilities. Most people are broadcasting a frequency of doubt, struggle, and uncertainty, so they attract experiences that match that signal. But when you learn to consistently broadcast the frequency of certainty, abundance, and focused intention, the external world has no choice but to reflect that upgraded signal back to you. The transformation happens so quickly when you access this state that it can feel almost surreal. Projects that seem like they would take years to complete suddenly accelerate. Connections that would normally require extensive networking happen spontaneously. Financial opportunities that weren't on your radar appear out of nowhere. Now, there's a specific technique for inducing this quantum state consciously, rather than waiting for it to happen randomly, and it involves understanding how to align your mental, emotional, and physical energy in a way that creates what can only be described as a different relationship with reality itself. Write in the comments, "I create quantum leaps," if you're ready to discover how to shift your consciousness in ways that accelerate your results beyond what seems logically possible. This quantum state we've been discussing becomes accessible when you understand what I call the alignment code, a specific way of organizing your mental, emotional, and energetic resources that creates an irresistible momentum toward your financial goals. Most people scatter their focus across multiple desires, worry about things they can't control, and allow doubt to contaminate their vision. But when you learn to align these elements properly, you tap into a force that seems to bend reality in your favor. The alignment code requires three elements operating simultaneously with laser-like precision. First, your mind must be focused on a single, crystal-clear vision of your financial destination. Not 10 visions, not 5 backup plans, but one compelling future that excites you so deeply that thinking about it naturally elevates your emotional state. This vision must be specific enough that you can see it, feel it, and almost taste it when you close your eyes. Second, you must learn to feel this vision as if it were already your current reality, not something you're hoping to achieve someday. This isn't about positive thinking or wishful hoping. It's about training your nervous system to operate from the emotional frequency of already having achieved your goal. When you can authentically feel abundant before abundance appears in your bank account, you're programming your subconscious to seek and recognize opportunities that match that emotional state. Third, and perhaps most critically, you must systematically eliminate doubt from your mental operating system. Doubt isn't just negative thinking, it's like static interference that disrupts the signal you're broadcasting to the universe. When desire is intense and accompanied by unwavering faith, when you combine emotional elevation with absolute certainty, the entire universe seems to conspire to support your vision. This isn't magical thinking, it's practical neuroscience applied to wealth creation. But here's where most people encounter their greatest obstacle, and it's something so deeply embedded in their psychology that they often don't even recognize it as the primary force blocking their financial transformation. No amount of money can help you if your subconscious mind still believes at a fundamental level that you don't deserve it. The most insidious barriers to wealth aren't external circumstances or lack of opportunities. They're the limiting beliefs that were installed in your mind during childhood, long before you had the capacity to consciously choose what you wanted to believe about money, success, and your own worthiness to achieve financial freedom. These childhood programs are particularly dangerous because they don't feel like limiting beliefs. They feel like common sense, practical wisdom, or moral virtue. They disguise themselves as reasonable caution or realistic thinking, but in reality, they're mental poison that was programmed into your subconscious before you could defend against it. Maybe you absorbed the idea that money is the root of all evil, that wealthy people are somehow morally corrupt, that you should be satisfied with just enough to get by, or that wanting more than basic survival needs makes you greedy or materialistic. Perhaps you internalized the belief that money doesn't grow on trees, that you have to work incredibly hard just to survive, that financial security is for other people but not for someone like you. These beliefs operate like invisible software running in the background of your mind, sabotaging your efforts to create wealth even when you consciously want financial freedom. You might work incredibly hard, learn all the right strategies, and take consistent action, but if your subconscious programming is telling you that you don't deserve abundance, that wealth is dangerous, or that financial success will somehow compromise your integrity, you'll unconsciously sabotage your own progress. The challenge is that these programs feel so natural and familiar that questioning them can feel like questioning reality itself. They've been with you for so long that you've built your entire identity around them. Changing them requires more than just intellectual understanding. It requires emotional courage and consistent reprogramming over time. The transformation begins when you become conscious of these hidden patterns, when you start to recognize the subtle ways your childhood conditioning is influencing your current financial decisions. Once you can see these patterns clearly, you can begin the process of consciously installing new programming that supports your vision of wealth rather than sabotaging it. Now, there's a specific method for identifying and transforming these deep-seated financial blocks that goes beyond surface-level affirmations or positive thinking. It requires understanding how these beliefs were formed and using that same psychological mechanism to install empowering beliefs that align with your true potential. Write in the comments, "I reprogram my worth," if you're ready to examine and transform the childhood conditioning that might be quietly undermining your financial success. This process of reprogramming your financial worth begins with a detective-like investigation into your own subconscious patterns, You must become curious about the automatic thoughts that arise when you think about money, success, or your own potential for financial freedom. Pay attention to the voice in your head that offers seemingly rational explanations for why wealth might not be possible for you, why you should be careful about wanting too much, or why other people deserve abundance, but you should remain humble and modest. Once you identify these root beliefs, the next step is to examine them with adult logic rather than accepting them as unquestionable truth. Ask yourself, is it actually true that money corrupts people? Or do money and power simply amplify who people already are? Is it really virtuous to struggle financially? Or does financial stress actually make it harder to be generous and contribute positively to the world? Does wanting financial freedom really make you greedy? Or does it make you someone who values options, security, and the ability to help others? When you examine these inherited beliefs with mature reasoning, most of them begin to crumble under scrutiny. They reveal themselves as outdated programming that may have served a protective function when you were vulnerable as a child, but now limit your capacity to create the life you actually want as an adult. The replacement process requires more than just intellectual understanding. It demands emotional conviction. You must install new beliefs with the same intensity and repetition that originally created the limiting ones. This means crafting powerful, emotionally charged affirmations that directly counter your old programming and repeating them with genuine feeling until your subconscious begins to accept them as your new operating instructions. But here's where this transformation becomes truly remarkable. When your subconscious finally starts accepting that you deserve abundance, when your internal programming aligns with your conscious desires for wealth, your behavior, energy, and decision-making automatically begin to change. You don't have to force yourself to think like a wealthy person. You naturally start thinking like a wealthy person because that's who you've trained yourself to be at the deepest level. This internal shift activates what Emmet Fox understood as one of the most fundamental laws governing human experience. Every thought that you sustain with intense emotion becomes an order to the universe. This isn't mystical speculation. It's a practical principle that explains why some people seem to effortlessly manifest their desires while others struggle despite tremendous effort. Gold, in every sense, begins in the mind of man. Every fortune that has ever been created started as nothing more than a sustained thought in someone's consciousness, but not just any thought, a thought that was charged with emotional intensity, supported by unwavering faith, and maintained with disciplined consistency over time. What makes this principle so powerful is understanding that your present thought is always stronger than your past programming. No matter what financial conditioning you inherited, no matter what limiting beliefs were installed in your childhood, no matter what evidence your previous experiences might offer about your worthiness or capability, your current focus has the power to completely rewrite your story. Your mind today can literally start writing a completely different future than the one your past would predict. When you combine emotional intensity with sustained focus, when you feel your financial vision with the same certainty that you feel your current physical reality, you're essentially placing an order with the universe for a new set of circumstances. This isn't about denying current reality or engaging in wishful thinking. It's about understanding that your current reality is simply the manifestation of your previous thought patterns, and by changing those patterns now, you begin creating different results in the future. The transformation happens gradually at first, then suddenly, your subconscious mind begins accepting your new programming as truth. Your nervous system starts operating from elevated emotional states. Your decision-making becomes aligned with your vision rather than your fears. Your actions naturally become more strategic, more confident, more aligned with wealth creation rather than wealth avoidance. Now there's something even more profound that happens when you master this principle of sustained, emotionally charged thinking, something that connects your individual transformation to larger forces that can accelerate your results beyond what seems personally possible. Write in the comments, "My thoughts create my reality," if you understand that your mental focus today is literally designing your financial future tomorrow. This principle of sustained, emotionally charged thinking opens the door to what might be the most profound aspect of wealth creation that most people never discover. When you learn to consistently operate from elevated mental and emotional states, when your consciousness becomes clear and focused through the practices we've been discussing, you begin to access what can only be described as an invisible source of breakthrough ideas that seem to come from beyond your ordinary thinking mind. Here's what's fascinating about studying truly successful entrepreneurs and wealth builders. They often describe their most profitable ideas as coming to them in moments of calm clarity rather than through intense mental effort or analytical thinking. These aren't ideas they forced into existence through brainstorming or logical problem solving. Instead, they received these insights when their minds were quiet, relaxed, and open to possibilities they hadn't previously considered. Your mind isn't just a generator of thoughts, it's also a receiver, a sophisticated antenna that can tune into frequencies of intelligence and creativity that exist beyond your personal knowledge and experience. When your mental environment becomes calm and clear, when you're not constantly bombarded by worry, distraction, or internal noise, you create the perfect conditions for receiving ideas that can transform not just your financial situation, but your entire life trajectory. The challenge is that most people live in a constant state of mental turbulence. Their thoughts are scattered, their emotions are reactive, and their attention is fragmented across dozens of competing priorities. In this state, they can only access the ideas that already exist within their current level of understanding. But when you learn to induce states of calm, focused awareness at will, you open yourself to insights that come from what Emmet Fox called the infinite intelligence that governs all creation. This isn't mystical speculation. It's a practical skill that can be developed through consistent practice. The wealthy understand that their most valuable asset isn't their money or their connections or even their knowledge. It's their ability to access elevated states of consciousness where breakthrough solutions become visible and innovative strategies emerge naturally. But here's where this principle intersects with something equally important that separates true wealth builders from those who simply talk about building wealth. The most successful people operate with what I call silent discipline power. They don't announce their plans to the world. They don't seek validation for their ideas, and they don't waste energy on activities that create the appearance of progress without actually moving them forward. The truly rich move in silence, but their results speak louder than any words ever could. While others are busy posting about their goals on social media, attending networking events that feel productive but don't generate real value, or engaging in conversations that drain their energy rather than elevate their thinking, the wealthy are quietly executing strategies that compound over time into extraordinary outcomes. This silent approach serves multiple purposes. It protects their ideas from premature criticism or well-meaning but misguided advice from people who don't share their vision. It allows them to maintain focus without getting distracted by external opinions or validation-seeking behaviors. Most importantly, it channels all their creative energy into actually building their wealth rather than talking about building their wealth. Wealth is genuinely built in silence, forged through daily actions that no one sees, affirmed through consistent choices that prioritize long-term vision over short-term comfort. The most successful people understand that every moment spent explaining their plans to others is a moment not spent executing those plans. Every hour invested in seeking approval or managing other people's expectations is an hour that could have been used to create actual progress. This doesn't mean they're secretive or antisocial. It means they're strategic about where they invest their time, energy, and attention. They save their enthusiasm for the work itself rather than spending it on conversations about the work. They understand that premature sharing can dissipate the emotional energy that should be channeled into consistent action. The discipline required to maintain this silent focus is one of the most underappreciated aspects of wealth creation. It requires genuine confidence in your vision, independence from external validation, and the maturity to delay gratification in the form of recognition or praise until your results can speak for themselves. Now, there's a specific daily practice that combines this silent discipline with the receptive state of mind we discussed, creating a powerful synthesis that accelerates both the reception of breakthrough ideas and the execution of wealth-building strategies. Write in the comments, "I build in silence," if you understand the power of channeling your energy into action rather than explanation. This silent discipline becomes even more powerful when you understand how to navigate one of the most challenging aspects of any wealth-building journey. The inevitable moments when things don't go according to plan, when strategies fail to produce expected results, when setbacks occur that can either derail your progress or accelerate your growth in ways you never anticipated. Here's what separates those who achieve lasting wealth from those who give up after their first major disappointment. They've learned to recognize that every failure carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. This isn't motivational platitudes or positive thinking designed to make you feel better about disappointing outcomes. This is a practical principle that governs how breakthrough opportunities actually appear in the real world. Failure isn't the end of your journey. It's a test, a purification process, a filter that eliminates those who are only casually committed while strengthening and refining those who are truly determined to succeed. When you study the backgrounds of extraordinarily successful people, you'll notice that many of their greatest breakthroughs came not during periods of smooth progress, but immediately following what appeared to be devastating setbacks. The challenge is that when you're in the middle of a difficult situation, when a business venture fails, when an investment doesn't pan out, when a strategy you believed in completely falls apart, it's incredibly difficult to see the hidden opportunity that's embedded within that experience. Your natural human tendency is to focus on what you've lost, to feel discouraged about the time and energy you've invested, to question whether you have what it takes to succeed at this level. But the wealthy have trained themselves to ask different questions during these moments. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, they immediately begin looking for what they can learn, what adjustments they need to make, what new capabilities they need to develop, and what unexpected doors might be opening as a result of this apparent setback. They understand that the greatest opportunities often come disguised as temporary failures. This perspective shift requires something that most people struggle to maintain during difficult times: absolute control over their attitude, regardless of external circumstances. And this brings us to perhaps the most empowering truth about wealth creation that you'll ever encounter. In a world where so many things seem beyond your control, where economic conditions fluctuate, where other people make decisions that affect your life, where unexpected events can disrupt your plans, there's one element that remains completely within your power to determine. The only thing you have absolute control over is your attitude, and your attitude literally creates your reality rather than simply responding to it. Most people have this relationship backwards. They wait for their circumstances to improve before they'll allow themselves to feel optimistic. They wait for evidence of success before they'll believe success is possible. They wait for external validation before they'll maintain confidence in their vision. But those who achieve extraordinary results understand that you must first adjust your attitude, and then life responds to that. Internal shift. When you choose to maintain an attitude of certainty about your financial destination, when you decide to expect success with unwavering conviction rather than approaching your goals with anxiety and doubt, you literally begin to attract the people, opportunities, and resources that align with that expectation. This isn't about forced positivity or denying current reality. It's about understanding that your attitude is the lens through which you perceive and interpret everything. That happens to you. When you maintain an attitude of possibility and expectation, you notice opportunities that were invisible when you were operating from fear and uncertainty. When you approach challenges with an attitude of curiosity and growth rather than victimhood and complaint, you discover solutions that weren't apparent when you were focused on problems. Success consistently comes to those who expect it with certainty rather than hoping for it with anxiety. The difference between expectation and hope is profound. Hope suggests that good things might happen if you're lucky. Expectation suggests that good things will happen because you're creating the conditions for them to appear. Now, there's a specific daily practice that helps you maintain this empowering attitude, even when external circumstances seem to contradict your vision, even when temporary failures test your resolve, and even when others around you are responding to the same situations with discouragement and defeat. Write in the comments, "My attitude creates my reality," if you're ready to take complete ownership of the one thing that's entirely within your control and use it to reshape everything else. This power of attitude to create reality becomes exponentially more effective when you learn to harness what successful people understand as the most influential moments of your entire day. There's a hidden window of opportunity that opens every single morning, a time when your subconscious mind is more receptive to new programming than at any other point in your waking hours. The first 30 to 60 minutes after you wake up represent a neurological state that's neither fully asleep nor completely alert. During this transitional period, your brain waves are still operating in frequencies that allow direct access to your subconscious programming. This is why the thoughts and emotions you experience during these early morning moments have such a disproportionate impact on the rest of your day and ultimately the direction of your entire life. Most people completely waste this precious window. They immediately reach for their phones, flood their minds with news and social media, or allow their thoughts to drift toward whatever worries or obligations are waiting for them. But wealthy individuals have discovered that these morning moments can be used as a daily reprogramming session that literally reshapes their destiny over time. The practice involves creating what Emmet Fox called conscious auto-suggestion during this receptive state. Instead of allowing random thoughts to dominate your morning consciousness, you deliberately choose what you want to install in your subconscious mind. You begin with silence and focused breathing to center yourself, then you declare your financial purpose out loud with conviction and emotion. You visualize your wealth goals as if they were already achieved, feeling the emotions of success as intensely as possible. Finally, you launch. Clear, specific orders to your subconscious about the kind of person you're becoming and the results you're creating. This isn't just positive thinking or motivational ritual. It's strategic neural programming that takes advantage of your brain's natural receptivity during early morning hours. When practiced consistently, this morning routine literally rewires your subconscious operating system to support wealth creation rather than unconsciously sabotaging your efforts. But even the most powerful morning programming can be undermined if you're not equally intentional about another factor that shapes your consciousness throughout the rest of your day: One of the most profound truths about human psychology is that no person can rise above the influences of their environment unless they deliberately and consciously reconfigure that environment to support their highest aspirations. This principle operates whether you're aware of it or not. You inevitably become the average of the people you spend the most time with, the ideas you consume most regularly, and the physical and mental environment you're most consistently exposed to. Your thoughts, your energy levels, your decision-making patterns, even your sense of what's possible for your life, all of these are constantly being shaped by the influences that surround you. Most people underestimate how profoundly their environment affects their psychology and their results. They assume they're strong enough to maintain their vision and motivation regardless of who they spend time with or what they regularly expose their minds to. But human beings are inherently social creatures, and our nervous systems are designed to automatically mirror and adapt to the energy and thought patterns of our environment. If you're consistently around people who complain about money, who believe that wealth is difficult or somehow morally questionable, who operate from scarcity and fear, then regardless of your conscious intentions, their perspective will gradually influence your subconscious programming. If you regularly consume media that focuses on economic problems, social division, or reasons to be pessimistic about the future, that information becomes part of your mental diet and affects your emotional state and decision-making capacity. The transformation that occurs when you become intentional about curating your environment is remarkable. Suddenly, maintaining an optimistic attitude becomes easier because you're not constantly fighting against negative influences. Staying focused on your goals becomes more natural because the people around you support and understand your vision. Believing in possibilities becomes automatic because you're regularly exposed to examples of people who have achieved what you're working toward. This environmental reconfiguration requires courage because it often means distancing yourself from relationships that no longer serve your growth, even when those relationships are comfortable or familiar. It means being selective about what you read, watch, and listen to, choosing content that elevates your thinking rather than just entertaining you. It means creating physical spaces that remind you of your goals rather than your current limitations. Now, there's a specific strategy for systematically upgrading every aspect of your environment in ways that compound your progress and accelerate your transformation, creating what I call an environment of inevitable success. Write in the comments, "I design my environment," if you understand that your surroundings are either supporting your wealth goals or undermining them, and you're ready to take conscious control of every influence that shapes your daily consciousness. This environmental design becomes even more powerful when you understand that wealth creation operates on dimensions that go far beyond just practical strategies and psychological conditioning. There's a spiritual component to financial success that most people either ignore completely or approach with skepticism. Yet it's arguably the most important factor in determining whether your efforts result in sustainable abundance or temporary gains that eventually disappear. What I'm talking about is the recognition that there exists a superior intelligence that responds to thought when it's harmonized with genuine faith, clear purpose, and consistent action. This isn't about religious doctrine or mystical beliefs. It's about understanding that true wealth isn't just a mathematical sum of correct actions performed in the right sequence. It's the result of deep alignment between your mind, your spirit, and your energy that creates what can only be described as synchronicity and manifestation. When you operate from this level of alignment, when your financial goals are connected to a sense of purpose that transcends just personal accumulation, when your actions are guided by both practical wisdom and intuitive insight, you begin to experience what Emmet Fox called cooperation from the universe itself. Opportunities appear at exactly the right moments. The perfect people enter your life just when you need their expertise or connections. Resources become available in ways that seem almost orchestrated by an invisible intelligence that's supporting your vision. This spiritual dimension of wealth creation explains why some people, with limited education, modest resources, and no apparent advantages, seem to effortlessly build extraordinary fortunes, while others, with superior knowledge, better connections, and more starting capital, struggle to achieve even moderate success. The difference isn't in their external circumstances. It's in their ability to align their personal ambitions with something larger than themselves. This alignment happens naturally when you understand that the most sustainable and fulfilling wealth is always built on a foundation of service to others. No great fortune in history has ever been created in isolation or purely for selfish purposes. Money flows toward those who provide genuine value to the world in an organized, persistent way with a positive attitude toward the people they serve. This isn't about sacrifice or putting others' needs before your own financial goals. It's about recognizing that the universe operates according to an unbreakable law. You can only harvest what you sow. If you sow value, usefulness, and solutions to real problems that people face, the universe will ensure that abundance flows back to you in proportion to the impact you create. The challenge for many people is that they approach wealth creation from a perspective of getting rather than giving. They focus on what they want to extract from the marketplace rather than what they can contribute to it. They think about money as something to be taken from others, rather than something that's created through the exchange of genuine value. But when you shift your perspective to focus primarily on how you can serve, how you can solve problems, how you can make other people's lives better, easier, or more fulfilling, you tap into a completely different source of creative energy and motivation. Instead of feeling like you're competing against others for limited resources, you begin to see opportunities everywhere to create value that didn't exist before. This service-oriented approach to wealth building also creates a psychological foundation that can sustain long-term success. When your wealth is built on helping others achieve their goals, when your money comes from making a positive difference in the world, you never have to question whether you deserve abundance. You know you've earned it through the value you've provided. The transformation that occurs when you align your financial goals with genuine service to others is profound. Your work becomes energizing rather than draining because you're connected to a purpose that transcends just making money. Your creativity expands because you're constantly looking for new ways to help people rather than just new ways to profit. Your persistence increases because you're driven by more than just personal gain. You're driven by the satisfaction of making a meaningful contribution. Now, there's a specific way to structure your wealth-building activities so that service and profit become inseparable, creating what I call a self-reinforcing cycle, where the more value you provide, the more abundance flows back to you, which gives you greater capacity to provide even more value. Write in the comments, "I serve to prosper," if you understand that the fastest path to wealth is through becoming genuinely useful to others in ways that they're willing to pay for. This service-oriented approach to wealth creation operates according to what might be the most reliable and predictable law governing human experience: the law of return. Everything you give out into the world returns to you, multiplied, whether that's value or indifference, generosity or selfishness, excellence or mediocrity. Your thoughts, your attitude, and your actions function like boomerangs that inevitably come back to you, often in forms you don't immediately recognize, but always in perfect proportion to what you originally sent out. Understanding this law transforms how you approach every interaction, every business decision, and every opportunity to either contribute or take from the world around you. When you consistently provide exceptional value, when you treat others with genuine respect and consideration, when you approach your work with excellence and integrity, You're essentially making deposits into an invisible account that the universe maintains on your behalf. The return doesn't always come immediately, and it doesn't always come from the same people or situations where you made the original investment. But it always comes, and it usually comes multiplied beyond what you originally gave. This is why some people seem to live charmed lives where opportunities constantly flow their way, while others struggle despite working just as hard. The difference lies in what they've been consistently sowing through their thoughts, attitudes, and actions over time. What makes this principle so powerful is that it operates whether you're conscious of it or not. Every thought you think is essentially a seed that gets planted in the field of your future experience. Every word you speak is a declaration that sends instructions to the universe about what you expect to receive back. Every action you take is an investment that will generate returns, positive or negative, based on the energy and intention behind that action. If you consistently sow thoughts of greatness, if you speak words of possibility and encouragement, if you take actions that demonstrate excellence and service, then you'll inevitably harvest experiences of expansion, opportunity, and abundance. But if you sow thoughts of limitation and fear, if you speak words of complaint and criticism, if you take actions that are careless or selfish, then you'll harvest experiences that reflect those same limiting patterns. The challenge is that most people are unconscious about what they're sowing. They think casually, speak carelessly, and act reactively, then wonder why their lives seem to be filled with random disappointments and missed opportunities. They don't realize that everything they're experiencing is actually the harvest from seeds they planted through their previous thoughts, words, and actions. But when you become conscious of this law, when you start paying attention to the quality of energy you're putting out into the world moment by moment, you gain tremendous power to shape your future experiences. You begin to see every thought as an investment opportunity, every conversation as a chance to plant seeds of possibility, every action as a contribution to the kind of life you want to live. This conscious approach to energy investment requires tremendous consistency and self-awareness. It means monitoring your internal dialogue to ensure you're thinking thoughts that support your vision rather than undermining it. It means speaking in ways that lift others up rather than tearing them down. It means taking actions that reflect the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been. The transformation that occurs when you align all these elements, your thoughts, your words, and your actions, with a clear intention to serve and create value, is nothing short of remarkable. You begin to experience what can only be described as a different relationship with reality itself, where positive synchronicities become normal, where helpful people appear regularly in your life, where opportunities seem to seek you out rather than requiring you to chase them. Now, there's something even more profound that happens when you combine this conscious energy investment with the spiritual alignment we discussed earlier, something that explains why certain individuals seem to achieve results that appear almost miraculous to outside observers. Write in the comments, "I sow consciously," if you understand that your current experience is the harvest from your previous energy investments, and you're ready to start planting seeds that will create the financial future you actually want. This conscious energy investment creates a momentum that becomes self-reinforcing. But there's something I need to share with you that might be uncomfortable to hear, yet absolutely essential for your transformation. After everything we've discussed, after all the principles we've explored, after understanding the profound mechanics of wealth creation that most people never discover, there comes a moment when knowledge must transform into action, or it becomes nothing more than sophisticated entertainment. If you've followed this journey this far, but still don't act on what you've learned, then you condemn yourself by choice to remain exactly where you are. This isn't meant to be harsh, it's meant to be liberating because it puts the power entirely in your hands. The majority of people fail not from lack of talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but from an excess of excuses that they've elevated to the status of reasonable explanations. Wealth is a mental state in action, not a passive desire that remains trapped in words and intentions. You can understand every principle perfectly, feel inspired by every insight, and agree intellectually with every strategy. But if that understanding doesn't translate into consistent daily behavior, then it's worthless for creating actual financial transformation. Everything you need is already within you. It always has been. You now know the principles that govern wealth creation. You understand what you need to do to reprogram your subconscious, align your environment, and channel your energy strategically. You've felt the fire of possibility burning inside you as you've absorbed these insights. The only question that remains is whether you'll actually light that fire into sustained action. The formula is deceptively simple: a focused mind plus daily action plus unshakable faith equals inevitable destiny. But simplicity doesn't mean easy, and understanding doesn't automatically create transformation. You stand at a crossroads where you must choose between two fundamentally different paths forward. You can continue living like everyone else, consuming information without implementing it, hoping for change without creating it, dreaming about wealth while maintaining the habits of mediocrity. Or you can start thinking like the few who understand that knowledge without action is merely intellectual decoration, that transformation requires the courage to step into uncertainty, and that your destiny is determined not by what you know, but by what you consistently do with what you know. The fact that you're still here, that you've absorbed these principles with me, tells me something important about who you are. You're not someone who settles for surface-level motivation or quick fixes. You understand that real transformation requires depth, commitment, and the willingness to look at wealth creation through a completely different lens. If this conversation has shifted something inside you, if you recognize that these aren't just ideas but practical tools for reshaping your financial reality, then I'd love to have you join this community of people who are serious about conscious wealth creation. Hit that subscribe button, because I'm constantly sharing insights like these that you won't find in mainstream financial education. This is where we explore the deeper mechanics of success that most people never discover. And if you made it all the way through this journey with me, if you feel like this message was specifically meant for you at this moment in your life, drop a comment saying, "This message was meant for me." I read every comment. And there's something powerful about declaring your commitment to transformation in writing. The connection we've built through this conversation means something to me. So if it resonated with you, a simple like lets me know that this content is serving people who are ready to think differently about wealth and success. Now, everything we've discussed today becomes even more powerful when you understand how to apply these principles to your specific situation, and there's a video right here that takes you deeper into the practical implementation of these concepts. Click and continue with me over there, because your transformation is just getting started.